Hello again. Who are you?
It's been a while, hasn't it? Been a
I
long,
know.
long while. How's things over there?
Well, things over here are very much the same as they ever were. Same as it ever was, yes. So morning routine of walking dogs, going to the restaurant, having a coffee, and then getting on in the day with whatever needs doing, and then finishing the day with an evening walk and the dogs. And I had, for the first time tonight, I actually ate in the restaurant, because up until now I have been cooking for myself. So it was nice. I had a red bean soup, which is lovely. Excuse me. Very nice indeed. So there we go. That's me. What about you? I'm sure your life's a lot more interesting than mine at the moment.
Yes, interesting, definitely. I've really been spending quite a bit of time with family, and as we know, one of the reasons for coming back was to spend some time with mum and dad. Dad having had an operation recently, which is actually it's a sort of ongoing thing that's been going on for many years now. But I'm happy to say that he's up and about, and I even helped him in the garden the other day, dismantling an old archway, which we needed to do. So it's great to see him moving around. I did also spend some time with another relative. I went and stayed with them for 2 nights, and their condition is far worse, actually. Well, I'm not that I'm comparing, but they haven't got it good, and this is obviously the age that I'm at now, is that we're having to tend to elderly relatives. And in fact, I went out, had a great night on Saturday night with a whole load of old friends, which was really good to catch up. But to be honest, the recurring theme was dealing with elderly parents and relatives.
Hello, I'm Liz.
And I'm Jamie.
Welcome to Follow the Boat, in which we discuss what it's really like to give it all up to live on a boat.
And go travelling around the world. We've been doing it since 2006, and we're still at it.
Each week we talk about our latest YouTube videos.
And about boats, sailing, travel, or anything else which floats into our heads.
And if you leave a comment we like, we'll give you an answer and a name check. Peace and fair winds.
For those who don't know, I'm in my approaching my mid-50s, which means my parents are approaching their 80s. And it's the same with a lot of my friends, and some of whom are having to care with parents with dementia, various problems. And so I guess, we're being responsible, we're being a loving, loyal child by, trying to be there to help them.
Yes, it's very difficult though, isn't it? And it's a great difficulty when you're literally on the other side of the world as well, because you can't stop thinking about them really in these kinds of times, can you?
No, we discussed in an earlier podcast about my anxiety that I had last year, and a lot of that stemmed from being away from the family for extended periods and knowing that on the other side of the world they're getting older, frailer, as well as, of course, other relatives, like my nephew's growing up and my niece as well. And yes, I guess a lot of it depends on the relationship that you have with your family, doesn't it? Obviously, yeah. You yourself, you went through the same thing with your mum, and you were very close to your mum, and you were not duty bound, but you wanted to be back there with your mum for extended periods of time.
Yes, and my dad. Very close to both of them. And of course, both my parents have now died. They died before COVID, so it's a few years ago now. And I'm glad they weren't around when that came, because I don't know what I would have done. I probably would have had to have gone back to stay with them. But it was very, very hard. And you watched me go through it, and you could see I used to get quite upset about not being with them. Half the time I wanted to be with them, but also they were both adamant that I shouldn't stop what I was doing. So it is very difficult. The way we managed it in my family was that my brother lived nearby both of them. So he was able to be there all year round, because he just happened to live there. And then I would go back every year, at least once, if not twice, for a month, certainly a month, 2 months at a time. and live those entire 2 months with them. So, that put quite a strain on deciding where we were going to go and what we could do and what you could do in any one year. But airfares were a bit cheaper then, so it wasn't quite so bad. But now the airfare that we just had to pay for you, it's nearly £2,000 to get you there and back, and that's a massive part of our income. Just thinking of it on more practical terms. But yeah, so you've seen me go through it, and I'm really keen that you don't have to go through what I did.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things, isn't it? And as you say, it does affect our cruising plans. I guess in some way, we're familiar with Southeast Asia. We love Southeast Asia. We now know where we can go to put the boat somewhere that's more convenient for me to go back to the UK. So I guess, at least we have that. It helps, of course, that you having been through this, you understand my situation. I imagine for a lot of cruisers, though, they'll have either already gone through this, i.e. tending to elderly relatives, or, the younger sailors have yet to go through this and won't go through this for many years. But it'll be interesting to hear from people in the comments for those who live away from home, not just on a boat, but maybe on land, but far away from family, relatives and friends, to ask them, what kind of compromises did they make? Because it is a big compromise. And as you said, it affects our cruising plans as well.
Yes, and ultimately, the title of this podcast is that at what stage do you decide to give it up and go home? And the first thing that came to mind when we were talking about this is the pull of one's family. For you, it's elderly parents. But for many other cruises, it's been the birth of grandchildren. So we're most cruisers are actually in their middle age to retirement age. You wouldn't think that when you look at YouTube channels. They all seem a lot younger, but really most of them are a lot older than that. So we have a combination of elderly parents and young children coming along, and they pull at the heartstrings at both ends. We've seen, haven't we, loads of couples that have given it all up because it's usually the woman cannot bear the idea of not being close to her grandchildren.
Yes, I mean, it does sound a bit sexist to say that, but it is generally from what we've seen. And, we have seen some cruisers who work around this. So, for example, he, on the whole, not always, but he will do the longer crossings and maybe recruit crew, friends or volunteers to help him travel those longer distances to then get somewhere so that she can, come to the boat when it's in a safe anchorage. And during the time of that transition, she'll then go back and spend time with the family. So, there are workarounds to it, and there's quite a lot of happy cruising couples who do work like this.
Yes, one of the favourite ones is half year on, half year off. So you have half a year on the boat, particularly if you're from somewhere with extreme seasons. During the winter, you can get on your boat in a nice sunny place and spend 6 months cruising, say here in Southeast Asia or in the Caribbean or somewhere like that, or the Med. And then when the summer comes in your own place of residency, whichever country you live in, you go back for your summer. So you have half a year there and half a year on the boat. That is one workaround. We knew. Go on.
I was just going to say the practicalities of that, though, which people may not consider, is that in those 6 months off, you need to put your boat more than likely on the hard, but you might leave it in the water. And you may have heard this expression, use it or lose it. And that applies to every single system on board the boat. So for 6 months of the year, when you're not using the boat, it will deteriorate. That could be the seals in the toilet mechanisms, the engine. And, we do know of one couple actually who tried this strategy of 6 months on, 6 months off. And they gave up in the end and sold their boat because they were fed up with coming back to the boat and having to spend 2 months recommissioning the boat. So that idea doesn't always work.
No, I mean, we're used to doing boat maintenance pretty much all the time, but regularly throughout the year. But having to do it all in one go, when you've got a finite amount of time, that's a very different matter. There was another guy we knew when we were in Turkey, and he was desperate to live on a boat. He wanted a boat. He used to be a tugboat or no, Thames barge owner, wasn't it, John?
Yes.
And he got himself a boat in the Med. We met him in Turkey, lovely guy, and he lived on the boat, and his wife lived on land, and she would just come out and see him for summer holidays, the holidays and high days, and come and stay on the boat with him. But the rest of the time, they led kind of separate lives. It worked for them. They were older, grown-up children who'd gone off and got their own families, and they were quite happy with that arrangement. And whatever floats your boat.
Yes, I don't know that would work with us, to be honest. That situation.
No. What I was going to say, the other thing is you've got to be at a certain level of wealth to do this, because we get our income from our flat in London, but so we can't go back for 6 months. Because where would we go? Because if we went back to our flat, we'd have no income. So it's not something that we could do. So it tends to be people who've got some other source of income that do that. Perhaps if you retired and you've got a nice pension paying you, you can afford to do that. I don't know. So that it's going to be very different for very different people, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, in fact, I did ask the question on our Discord server, and got a few replies from people. I was basically just trying to gauge from cruisers, how they plan for the long-term future. And of course, we've got quite a different profile, a big profile of users on our Discord channel. So some of whom have yet to buy their boat and move on to it. So that question is quite difficult for them to answer. And then others who have already been on the boat for some time. The general answer seemed to be, I don't even know what I'm doing tomorrow, let alone in 10 years' time, which is something I quite often hear myself say, which is kind of true in some respects. That is sometimes the nature of being a cruiser, is that you are at the whim of weather and many other things outside of your control.
That's quite good. If they're already thinking like that, then they're going to make good cruisers. So they're not trying to plan too much, not trying to work around deadlines and have short-term goals. You can't on a boat. So that's good, whoever said that.
Sorry for interrupting, but while I've got you here, if you like what we do and you want to support us and become a Patreon, or join us on FTP Mates, or even drop a quid in the rum fund, go to followtheboat.com/pub. Of course, come to the pub.
Salty Lass, who are on our Discord server, say 10 years is too far ahead for planning. At best, it is aspirational, but we are at the mercy of elderly relatives who need a lot of support. And this is why, this idea is starting to chime more and more with myself. We are unsure if we will even be able to cruise locally next season, never mind going off around the world. So they're obviously already in that situation. I think they're a little bit older than me, perhaps, and having to deal with these relatives. David, on the other hand, David Johnson, he's at the other end of the scale. He's still planning to move on to his boat, and his wife is from Thailand, but they are based in the States. And he said that when eventually they move on to the boat, they will have relatives in Florida, Michigan, and of course Thailand. He did at one point say that there were no solid plans to have to return to the family in later years, but of course he's just going to have to reassess that situation if and when it happens. Of course, the big difference here, of course, is that we know how families operate in Thailand. You have much bigger extended families all looking out for each other, which is a great thing to have. But for David, it was a little bit difficult for him to try and get his head around what he would do.
Well, that's like us when we first started. We always used to say we just could never imagine not being on a boat. We just say, we'll get a smaller boat, an easier boat, we'll do something, don't know what we'll do. So very difficult and impossible for people in that position, I think.
It's true, and that's exactly what I was going to lead to, because when we first started and we were asked, well, how long are you going to live on the boat? We just said forever. We just said we will always live on the boat. And I think actually still, I think we would always love to stay on the water at the very least. But, you know, your plans do change and circumstances do change. And this idea of going back to care for family or friends, it is becoming more and more relevant to us, or to me at least. And it's not something that I really thought about when I first started in my 30s.
No, that's right. So, okay, so that's probably the one that came up as the number one reason for stopping cruising. But the one that I thought of almost immediately was health, one's own health. So while we worry about our parents maybe and our family and the people that we've left behind, the other big worry is your own health. So how long can you actually go on cruising if you yourself are not well? We always say one of the important things to do is to keep healthy, keep on top of your own health, and try and do a little bit of exercise every day, and just be able to run a boat. But of course, that's not always the way. That's not always what happens, is it?
No, and again, I mean, we've noticed ourselves how much we've slowed down. Obviously, the tropics, we've discussed this before about how it can really wipe you out. But we've certainly noticed as we get a little bit older, we slow down a bit. We're
Speak for yourself.
Well, we're not as aggressive in our cruise. I remember do you remember that time Mum and Dad came over to visit in Turkey, and you were up in a parasailer with a video camera trying to record us from the air, while I was running around the boat with my poor old parents trying to get all the light wind sails out. And for me, this was quite a normal way of sailing, aggressive and getting all the sails out that we could. Well, we just don't sail like that anymore. And it's not just because we're more cautious and more knowledgeable about the things that can go wrong, but it is also because it's exhausting. It's hard work. So yes, we do slow down.
Yes, I don't think that we're at the stage where we can't do it anymore. We're relative youngsters when you consider that we know people who in their 80s and even their 90s who still live on a boat. Now, obviously, they're not as able, perhaps, as they used to be, although there are some very strong 80-year-olds out there. So, yeah, age and health can hold you back. I mean, there are people in their 50s and 60s that are much, much more unhealthy than people in their 80s. So is it an attitude of mind as well? I mean, maybe that's the problem. We certainly, when we got to Langkawi, found a lot of people who'd gone that far around the world, arrived in Langkawi and then sort of gave up, didn't they?
Well, I think for them it's just a comfortable place for them to hang out. Maybe they made new friends. And of course the next big crossing for them would be across the Indian Ocean, which maybe after they've done a circumnavigation or done the Pacific, they just kind of decided that they'd had enough. And maybe, Langkawi is that example, is the place that they were always looking for, that they would end up after their cruising. I mean, we've often talked about, where we would settle on the boat, but, where would we settle in the world? And
we've never come to a conclusion, have we?
Well, there's a couple of places we always chalk up as being potentials that, or rather we could quite happily see ourselves living there. But it was always just a fun conversation, wasn't it? It was never something that we really thought about. And maybe we are getting to that stage where we're now thinking, well, we can't spend the rest of our lives on the boat, or certainly we can't spend our time on the boat full time in the coming years because of these commitments we discussed earlier. So maybe we do have to start thinking about, slowing down, or maybe just holding up somewhere for a few years. Who knows? I just don't know. I just wanted to read quickly Rob Benfinetti. He just said something that just really chimed with me as well. He just, after saying a few other things on Discord, he just said, "Sailors until the end? ? Honestly, no. I admire some people in their late 70s who are able to manage their sailing yacht. I personally believe that you need to be in a decent physical state to keep on sailing, and I plan to be home one day with lots of pictures and memories. And again, this is something that I think, as full-time cruisers, we're so caught up in being a cruiser, running the boat and what have you, that sometimes we forget that maybe this is just a stage in our life that later on we look back on with happy memories. That's never occurred to me before.
I like that idea. I think that's very important. I've always found for myself that the most treasured things in life are experiences and therefore memories, far more than things. It's those moments when I can just close my eyes and be transported back to an incredible time with all the senses, alert to what it was like then. That's the thing that I remember most. And you've got them there forever. Especially if you do what we do and film them and put them on videos, you can go back. It's very interesting because every time you do a new episode, our episodes are always a few months behind. And there are bits that come up that I had forgotten. And then I see them on the video and I suddenly, it all comes flooding back. Oh yes, there was that, wasn't there? I'd completely forgotten we went there. Obviously the highlights remain, but there's lots of smaller bits and pieces that they're there forever, which is great. So I would suggest anybody who watches them to do their own. You don't have to put them on YouTube, but just take loads and loads of footage and just make yourself some memories. Because there are times when you get older when you can't conjure up what went on when you were younger. Now, Mum had Parkinson's, and towards the end of her life, she lost some of her faculties. She was pretty good, though, until the very end. She didn't get dementia, really. But one of the things we loved doing together was going through her photo albums. And I went on holiday with her, 50 years ago, just the two of us. And we had loads of holidays, just the two of us. And she went with various other people, and she went on her own to different places around the world. And we take the photos out and go through them together. And it all came tumbling back, and she remembered it all so well. It's so important, making these memories.
It is. I mean, I used to joke that the reason why I wrote a blog, which turned into our YouTube vlog, was precisely because I was worried about getting dementia or losing my memory or those memories fading, and so that I would have something that I could look back on. As you say, I mean, even when I edit the videos, I'm going through the footage and I'm suddenly A, taken back there, and B, reminded of things that I'd forgotten. So yeah, I mean, it's obviously what we do is a lot of effort, but at the very least, it's worth taking photos and making sure you save those photos to remind you of and have these great happy memories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how we've gone off down this avenue. It's not really the title of the pod, but it's lovely to think that we, in our dotage, wherever we end up, we will be able to look back and be well reminded of what we were doing. It's not to say there isn't going to be lots of new memories to make, certainly. Maybe not in the way that we are right now, but who knows? We don't really know what we're going to do yet. Just going back onto health, though, it's very much a personal thing. I think it's fair enough. He wants to be sitting with his memories. Other people just never want to do that. They will go on until they fall off the boat and die, and that's the way they are. And I think somewhere between there is where most of the rest of us lie. The other thing also, I mean, I touched on it, and so have you, with dementia, is that you've got to be careful with your mental health as well, because that can just put the kibosh on everything. I'm not saying don't get dementia. I'm just saying, anxiety, stress, depression. These are the modern afflictions that everybody's getting. And yes, even someone who lives on a boat in the beautiful tropical sunshine and doesn't have a job, you can get those kinds of afflictions anywhere. So mental health, massively important, and is a big factor in people giving up this life, I think.
Yes, well, we discussed this in our podcast on anxiety, but I can't remember if I actually said, when I analysed my situation, I realised that I needed to remove one thing that would remove that anxiety. And at the time, it was the boat. And that continued for many months. I mean, it wasn't until later on this year, after the rainy season, when I started getting my confidence back, when we started traveling east again. But up until that point, I was very, very nervous and anxious. And I realized the main reason was because of my concerns of the boat. Well, as it transpires, which we have alluded to in the previous podcast, it turns out that there were a number of problems that we are now dealing with. So they were quite justified, those that anxiety that I had. And
but
by the way, can I just, sorry Liz, I just wanted to quickly say before I forget, someone said in the comment on our episode that went out last Sunday, great to see you back in Indonesia, Jamie. We should just explain that our vlogs go out every other Sunday, and then in between those we do our podcast, and the podcast is real time, so I know it's a little bit confusing, but the episodes, the travel vlogs, are from a few months ago. So just wanted to explain that, by the way.
Yeah, so we haven't actually said, have we? You're in the UK and I'm here on the boat on the Hard in Indonesia, and hence this rather odd setup with us with headphones and doing it via Zoom. Yeah, so here we are, talking about not necessarily when we're going to give up, but when do people give up and why do they? There's lots of different reasons. Would really be interested to hear from people in the comments, because we have a lot of people who do what we do and a lot of people who've done what we've done. Quite often get comments from you guys saying, yes, well, I did that, I don't do that anymore, and we like watching you because that's what we did, and that's great, and I'm really pleased that we're able to bring our experience to people who've got some kind of similar experience. So really, if you've got some reasons and a little stories about why you gave up, what age you were, without going into too many prying at all, be very interested to read them in the comments, wouldn't you?
Yes, definitely. And as you say that, I was thinking we've got a number of comments from a few of our viewers who have said, oh yes, I was cruising around Indonesia in the 80s. And I remember thinking, but you're not now. So obviously that was 40 odd years ago. But yes, you're not doing it now. But it sounds like you lived on a boat for 20 years or so. Exactly that. We'd love to know what happened next.
Yeah, and compare notes with what it was like then. Wow, I bet some places haven't changed at all, but I expect in other senses it will have. So mental health, physical health, these are good reasons why people give up. And sometimes they're just insurmountable. The best thing is to give up. The pull of the family and the friends and home generally, perhaps you've been away for so long and you suddenly remember what it was like growing up. Maybe you're looking back on life at home through rose-tinted specs and thinking, well, I've done my roaming now. I've done my roaming. I'm ready to go back, settle down, try something completely new. Sometimes you can go on doing this for a while and think, actually, don't want to do something different now. No, people do.
That's very true. I think I put too much pressure on myself to maintain our lifestyle, partly because of YouTube and the vlog and the recording of our journey. So there's always that pressure there. But also there's something inside of me that perhaps unjustly says, well, you've failed if you stop living this life. And it's not that I see it as some kind of competition, but there is something there that just keeps me ticking over for maybe the wrong reasons, and that maybe I need to reassess our lifestyle and say, okay, look, we did close to 20 years on the boat, we had great fun. Perhaps now is the time to start thinking of a new adventure. So it's not the end of one adventure, it's the beginning of something new and completely different. And hey, I mean, what's more exciting than starting a completely new lifestyle? We know all about that because we did it 20 years ago when we bought the boat. It was so exciting. And maybe we can do that all over again by starting a completely new project?
Well, I definitely want to do something new. I think in a way I've got a little bit stale. I love it. Obviously, I love being in a boat on the water. It's probably my favourite thing. If we do something new, I think to get off of a boat would be very difficult for me. I've said it before, can't stay in one place. So we need to think of something. Actually, I wonder if people have got ideas. What should we do next? If we don't stay on Esper in Southeast Asia, what shall we do? Now, obviously, we've said this a million times. One of the things we were going to do was to go to the Mediterranean and live there. But then Brexit came along and stopped all that. So, and anyway, that's still living on the boat. What else can we do and should we do? What is going to energise us? Energise you guys as an audience, because there's no reason why we can't carry on doing our weekly. You've always done a diary, so I think we'll probably keep doing vlogs anyway. We may no longer be Follow the Boat. Actually, I think we will be. But I don't. Yeah, stop thinking that you're a failure because you want to do something else. You have to think of all the successes. We've done this for longer than most people, certainly on YouTube. And we've rinsed it dry. We've had so much fantastic experiences and whatnot out of this. So it does sound like separately we're coming to a similar conclusion that we need to galvanise ourselves into something new and exciting, and we need to try and put in all the things that we like and want to do and come up with something.
Do you like our hats? You can get your own from our shop. Find them at followtheboat.com/shop. Sorry about that. I had to relocate because the sun was coming through the window. So, which is a nice segue into, you haven't seen this, have you? Ta-da! This is my new FTB hat. I absolutely love this hat. These are not yet available in the shop, but if anyone is interested, then let us know what you think of this. And we've gone back to the original fatter lettering as well. And if you don't like this two-tone brown, then how about this one? This is yours.
Oh, I love it.
It's pretty cool, isn't it?
It's really nice.
They're such great hats as well. I mean, I wear mine all the time.
Yeah.
So
in the hot weather, because it's got the mesh at the back, hasn't it? So it breathes.
Yes. So if anyone's interested in those, let us know if you'd like us to put those in our shop. Link below. Before we sort of wrap up, Liz, that I just wanted to go back to bum wash, which we discussed in the last podcast. It was one of the things I said that I missed about Asia was what I called the bum wash. But David Johnson on Discord said that he calls it the bum gun, probably because he's American. So, and then we had a few more suggestions. Lundo Bali, who's actually based in Indo, says bum blaster, which we would be able to get away with, because my concern was calling it bum gun on YouTube might draw some attention from the YouTube algorithm.
You've done it now.
Sandstone said, how about sphincter shower? To which Nautic Hunt, you don't want to say his name too quickly, by the way, came back with the sphincter sprinkler, which I thought was a very good one. Crack attack, there's another one. We could go on. These just tickled me anyway. They made me laugh.
Yes. Well done.
Yes.
So are we going to go on?
No, you and I are about to say the same thing, I think, which is really just to wrap up this inconclusive chat, because I don't think we are saying anything in particular ourselves, are we? It's not like we're making a decision to stop or anything like that, but we would love to hear from other people.
Yes, and I think we are thinking that, not necessarily that we're going to stop, but we are thinking further afield. We are ready to do something new and something different. I think if we've already said that, so that's out there. And, you know, so when you talk about things like this, it really does make you think. So what will it be? And the other thing I want to say to you is, you know, in response to your rather negative attitude towards it, don't think of it as quitting. Just because you're stopping doing one thing, you're going on to something else, that's new and different and challenging in different ways. Perhaps more challenging, perhaps not as challenging, but just making a leap into something new, that is the most challenging thing. So don't think of it as the negative, as the old thing, think of it as the new thing. That's what I just wanted to get across.
Yes, I think, my biggest concern is the lifestyle that we have is a great lifestyle. And especially as I get more and more into my photography, and I should say, by the way, the next vlog episode when we end up in Bima, the capital town of Sumbawa, there's a whole load of street photography, which I'm very keen to show everyone. And those kind of situations, if we were to completely change our lifestyle, I worry about not having access to those kind of photography projects. And even if it's not photography, just the ability to go to completely new and different places that we've yet to discover, which is part of the excitement. So I think there's always a little bit of that concern going on. I'm not saying I feel like a complete failure. That I perhaps phrased it incorrectly, but I do worry a little bit about what I'll leave behind, I suppose, were we to change our lifestyle.
Your legacy.
But as you say, it's about not looking backwards, but looking forwards to what new and exciting adventures await us.
If you find this topic interesting and would like to continue the conversation, come and join the Follow the Boat Discord community. Look for the link in the description. It's free.
I think all I can say in summing up is that sometimes it's time to finish and to go and to do something new. And there are lots of reasons that people do that. People on boats do decide to stop. People who want to get onto boats can't for a minute understand why anyone would want to stop. And trying to get across to people why anyone would want to stop is very, very difficult. So as I say again, to those who have stopped, that your comments will be greatly valued by anybody watching this, I'm absolutely sure.
Yes, I think it's I sometimes struggle to put myself in the viewer's position who are looking at these little 15-minute snapshots of our adventures on the boat, where of course it's 90% of it is positive and fun and exciting, and occasionally we have the boat maintenance to deal with. But there's a whole load more going on behind the scenes that people don't see, which I'm hoping actually we are addressing in this podcast, is that there are external forces which sometimes you have no control over, and you need to respond to these external forces in one way or another. And so we're merely just discussing some possible alternatives, but we are not saying anything. We're not made a decision on anything. If anything, would love to know from you guys what you think.
Yes, definitely. Okay, do you think that's it? Is that it for this week? Enough of our rambling.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you to everyone who responded on Discord, of course. Great place to have a little chat with our viewers. So we always appreciate that. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you can. It helps us with the algorithm, which we've explained previously we don't really care about. But
no, we
just
don't.
Click it anyway, just for a bit of fun.
And before we go, obviously, haven't said this enough recently, big thanks to the people who support us. That's on Patreon, FTP Mates, through the Rum Fund, which of course, because you no longer drink, is now the Tea Fund or the Coffee Fund. And we've had a few people giving us super thanks. Is that what it's called on YouTube?
Yes.
You can just click a button and give us $5, which is just fantastic. So thank you so much to those people.
Yes, appreciate that, guys. Righty-ho. Yep, the sun's out. I'm desperate for a walk. I'm going to go for a nice country afternoon walk now.
Oh, I really would love to do that. Have fun. Bye.
Bye.